Up until now, we've only performed AND finds. To create an OR find, you need to understand how requests work. But what is an AND what is an OR find? Well, an AND find, as we said, is what we've done up until now. It says find by this criteria and this criteria. In other words, both criteria have to be on that record. So let's go into find mode and show you and remind you what an AND find is. If I come in here and type J into the first name and O into the last name and then perform the find, we're going to find only records that match J and O. Notice we didn't find Nancy Osborne or John Hiraki. Both those criteria have to match. And it's a little bit easier to see if we go back to our list view here, so we'll do that. You can see much easier that we only have found one record here. Now an OR find says I want to find by this criteria or this criteria. And we'll do the same find but with requests here. But let's start off by describing it. Think of candy. If you grab a handful of M&Ms with your left hand and a handful of Skittles with your right hand and then take those handfuls and put them in a bowl, you've combined that candy. It's the same idea. We can say search by this criteria and also search by this criteria, and once you're done by searching by both criteria, then combine them together. So it's like doing 2 finds or 3 finds or 4 finds and combining them all together. So let's go to find. We'll go into the first name field and type J. Then we'll hit new request, or we can do add new request, which has a keyboard command. We'll just click it here because it's much easier. You see we get a second request here. We'll type in O here. So now we have find any records that have J in them, or find any records that have O but in the last name. 2 requests. We'll perform that find. And you can see now we have John Osborne, which meets both criteria, but John Hiraki only meets the first criteria, but it's still found. Nancy only meets the last criteria, and it's still found. So that's an OR request. Find by either criteria. In fact, you can combine an OR and an AND if you want, which we'll do later. Let's go back into find mode and look at the rest of the request menu and cover some of these things. They're pretty simple, but I want to cover them to make sure they're clear. You have add new request, of course, duplicate request. That's like duplicate record, but in find mode. And the idea here is maybe you're putting together a complicated request that's John and Osborne in the first request, and maybe a whole bunch of other fields that you're searching on, and you want to make the second request, the OR, it's very similar to it, and you want to just change a few things. Well, duplicate it. And of course you can delete a request. We don't have the delete request option because we don't have a new request, so let's add it. You can see now we have the ability to delete it. We have go to request, just like we have go to record in browse mode. Just allows you to go to the different requests. If I choose previous here, you'll see the little arrow here change to the previous request. Same thing as doing this right here. Then we have show all records, and show all records actually takes you back to browse mode and shows you all records. So if we choose that, you'll see now you're looking at all records in browse mode. So we're going to go back to find, and let's talk about show all records. It's kind of a little tangent here, but it's related to what we're talking about. Some people think that when you do a find, you have to first do a show all records, but that's not true. When you do a find, FileMaker searches all of your records regardless of what your current found set is. So you don't have to do a show all records. There is an exception here. That's constrain and extend. They do work on the current found set. But if you're doing a perform find, which is really the same as this choice right here, well, that searches all records no matter what. Doesn't matter what you found already. This, on the other hand, which we'll talk about later, allows you to take that current found set and add criteria to constrain or extend. Then, of course, you have revert request, which is much like revert record in browse mode. Allows you to revert that request. I don't think I've ever used it, so I wouldn't worry too much about this choice. So what we also want to talk about is omits. So let's go in and talk about omits and see how they work. We're in find mode still, and let's do a simple omit without a new request. We're simply going to come in here and type in Osborne, and instead of include, which is the default, we're going to switch to omit and then perform that find. You can see we found everything but Osborne. See, we have 44 of 46 found. That's because the 2 outside the found set are Nancy and John Osborne. And you can quickly look at that by going to the records menu and choosing show omitted only to switch that found set. Say we're now looking at the 2 records we didn't find, or you can go ahead and click here and toggle. This is a little bit easier if you have the status toolbar showing to do it this way. So it found everything but the criteria you typed in. Now let's go ahead and do a find with a new request and choose an omit. So we're going to come in here and type in Osborne. Then we're going to hit new request and then go to the first name and type in John. But on the second request only, we're going to click omit. Notice that on the first request, if we click up here, it's an include. So find everything that has Osborne, and then exclude or omit all the Osbornes that have the name John in the first name. You can switch between them here and see how that toggles between matching records. So you set up each request individually for whether it's an include or omit. And then when we perform the find, you see we found Nancy Osborne. That's because John Osborne was omitted. So it's very important to understand how new requests work. They're a very important factor in making complicated find requests. And finds are probably the most common, but or finds can be very helpful, like find all the people who are in California or Utah, or California or Utah or Nebraska. These things are very common to be done. You want to find, maybe the Northwest states or something and call those people. Maybe you want to find all the East Coast states, or maybe you want to find all the cities in a particular county or something like that. These OR requests can be very handy, and so you want to really play around with this stuff. Not just watch what we're talking about here, just watch this tutorial. You should go back with all of these and try every single one of these things. You should actually build what we're talking about and try all the things so the retention is much better, so you really understand, and then try some of your own ideas. Let's try doing a different type of OR request and see if it gives you the results that you think it should.